Howdy, folks. We're back. Happy Wednesday. Happy hump day. We have lots to discuss since we've been off for a week, and we will be off the rest of the week and then resume our 3 days a week until around Labor Day, and then we'll probably start going every day as we normally have. I mean, this is the sort of dog days of summer, not only for baseball, but for hockey. Not a lot of news, but there was a lot of news last week, and we're going to talk about that now. But first, the pre-show. Go ahead, Russ.
Yeah, so I know Kevin Allen's going to have a hard time with this one, but the other day for the Mets-Phillies series in Philly, while we were out gallivanting around, Detroit and Chicago, a Mets, group went and bought 1,500 tickets to go to the Phillies game. Of course, on Philadelphia radio, they called it like a super group or I forget the term they used. It's like, this is a group of people. There's a lot of groups now that have team, that a lot of fans and they travel. So by traveling to Philadelphia, getting those 1,500 seats, the leader of the group had an opportunity to throw out the first pitch and did throw out the first pitch wearing Mets garb. And this has now created like a firestorm because how dare somebody from a rival fan base throw out a first pitch at a game, which again, the team advertised and lets you do if you have a 1,500 person group. And now it's become a big deal to the point where even like some of the radio media are yelling at the Phillies. And, my thing is this. Look, everybody knows I'm a Met fan, but if this happened at Citi Field, what could I do? I would be like, I don't care, because my feeling is celebrities have been doing this their entire lives. You could go look at first pitches, and there are celebrities that wear Yankee hats everywhere or Met hats. And so nobody says anything about celebrities, but a fan does it, and it's like, whoa.
We just saw it this weekend in Chicago when I think she was a gymnast or something like that. So almost threw it in the dugout. I mean, but to the point of what Russ is bringing up, I mean, Kev, we saw like John Scott make the All-Star game because somebody stuffed the ballot box. The fact that somebody bought 1,500 tickets and there was a Mets fan in Philadelphia. The Phillies are probably ecstatic they sold 1,500 tickets. I don't see the big issue here.
I don't either. I didn't when Scott got in either. If fans want to get together and bring Scott in, more power to them.
Yeah.
It's just an exhibition game, and in this case, it's just a marketing gimmick. You get to wear your garb in the, your opponent's, building. So, so I don't know. If I would do that or not, just because you create a little bit of tension, but it worked for them. I mean, 1,500 tickets, that's a lot of revenue.
And the other thing is, you're right, Kev. And the other thing is, so when the Phillies gave a quote like, hey, if you don't want this to happen, buy the seats. Then of course the radio media got mad at them today in Philly, like saying, oh, that's a terrible thing to say. It's like, no, it's not. It's a business. That's how you keep the other team out. You keep the other team out by buying the seats.
Yeah, and that's how you, afford superstars. When you have a revenue that's so great like that. So yeah, I mean, it's plus it just creates interest in the game. Everybody, I'm sure, was talking about it for a couple of days. So people get too worked up over these.
Not to mention, Kev, the guy who runs WFAN used to be in the Philadelphia market. His dad's Howard Eskin. So he's the one who probably prodded that, knowing that he's from Philly and people would always get mad. So people have been getting mad for a couple of days now.
Yeah.
Just one observation about the NFL. We're basically crawling day by day toward the beginning of the regular season. And this is why, I think that preseason games in general now are a complete waste of time. The Bills are playing 3 preseason games, and it's obviously a 17-game schedule, and they open the season, I think it's the 2 weeks from Thursday, the opener against the Rams. They've played 2 preseason games so far, and Josh Allen has played 1 drive. 1. He's not going to play in the final preseason game this Friday. Kev, if they're only going to play their start, and I don't disagree with that. I think it's smart because God forbid somebody, starters get hurt. But if you're afraid to play these guys, I don't see the use of preseason games any longer.
I don't see him at all. Any reason to have the exhibition season? I mean, and nothing brings that home more than in my city, where they've essentially said that a 5th-round pick is going to be a starter, and that they said that before the preseason games started, because just what they saw in practice. And the same would be true in hockey. Like, you don't need preseason games to know, they've scouted these players the previous season. They all kind of know where they're at in training camp. You get a feel for it. You could have some scrimmages with some teams that are nearby and, call it good, but they won't give up that revenue. And,
That's what
at least in hockey, it's a gate revenue driven league still. Most of the money comes from them. So I sort of get it for hockey, but in the NFL, it makes no sense. Like, they don't need that one gate that Detroit got for a preseason game.
The only thing is, there is a flip side. The flip side is, if the Bills start off week 1 and they stink in the first half and lose the first game, there will be fans that will complain that Josh Allen didn't play in preseason.
And they did last year. They played badly against Pittsburgh. They lost that first game, but he played a little more last year. I think right there, what they're concerned about is what happened with the Jets.
No, I get it, but there is going to be that fan reaction if they don't do well too.
Yeah, but if we didn't have an exhibition season, everybody would be in the same boat.
Right.
So,
They
Right.
would be.
I mean, in Corinne, like in hockey, I know, like, because I saw the schedule for the Leafs and for the Habs and for Ottawa, they're, at least in hockey, they're rewarding, the minor league cities with an NHL preseason game. Laval is getting one. Belleville is getting one. So, I see it that way. And those build.
Yeah, that's a way to see it. But the lineups in preseason games are always quite disappointing. I mean, for years, Montreal had a preseason game in Quebec.
Yeah.
And it was always a crap lineup, and people were like, well, there's Bettman laughing at us again. So, even city stars for hockey don't really want preseason games anymore. So
no. Well, and, last year, Lucas Raymond, Eisenman has said, they didn't really expect him, but, he played well in training camp and well in the preseason. But, all during that preseason, I remember specifically that Blashill said, you got to discount what Raymond is doing because we're not even playing NHL lineups. Well, if you're, then so you're really not making the team based on preseason games. You're making it on the basis of how good you look in training camp. And I think, I just don't. I think they've outlived their usefulness. Players are in shape year round now. They work at it all the time. They take like 2 weeks off after the season to decompress, and then right back at it. They're in the gym. They're skating. They're on top of it, because if they're not, they're behind. You show up and you're not in shape in an NHL training camp now, you're in serious trouble.
Right. All right, let's get started. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Wednesday, August 24th, 2022.
I'm Kevin Ice, apps blogger for Hockey Buzz.
I'm Russ Cohen, and I'm in radio shape all year round.
Kevin Allen, Hockey Buzz.
And I'm Michael Agello, and I'm out of shape all the time. And this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. All right, let's start with the news that has occurred since we had the last show, and we'll start in Calgary because, we've been waiting for Nazem Kadri, and we'll talk about the Islanders later on. But he finally jumped at a free agent deal over a month after free agency opened up. He got a 7-year, $49 million contract from the Calgary Flames. AAV-wise, I think he got a lot less than I thought he was going to get. I thought it was going to be a shorter-term deal with more AAV, but he really didn't have many options other than the Islanders, Kev. First, just talk about the signing. He's 32 years old. He's coming off a career year. He won a Stanley Cup. He did everything right in a career where sometimes he's done a lot of dumb things. I don't know whether the specter of the stupidity that he's done over his career coming back is what sort of cooled the market. But he is a talented player, and he is a center, and he fulfills a need for Calgary. What did you think?
Yeah, I mean, this ended up being a great signing. I don't think Calgary would have identified him as a player they needed, but the way the chips fell for them, then all of a sudden he looked like a good option. And, I spoke this morning with the general manager who really brought home, and he said, it really wasn't that teams were cool to Kadri. They simply had no money. Like, the ability to to trade players. Like he said, I keep reading all these names where they're going to dump those players. And where are you going to dump them? He said, if you look, nobody has money to even take in a $3 and a $4 million player, let alone, clear enough space to get, $7 million. So, Kadri's options were limited right from the beginning to just a few teams. And a couple of those teams, really weren't interested in giving him, a long-term deal. And because of that, he had to take what he could get. And he had a couple of options at the end there. And it's really hard to know what Lou Lamoriello was offering because he plays everything so close to the vest. But clearly he was not offering a 7-year deal. Or if he was offering a 7-year deal, it wasn't for $7 million. So it's either one or the other because this was clearly a better option for him.
Russ, I heard, and it's unconfirmed, but I heard that the offer that the Islanders made to Kadri was 5 years, which being 32 years old makes a little more sense. So he got the best deal from Calgary. Now, for you and Corinne, I saw a quote from Dan Rosen. He was interviewing Jacob Markstrom, the goalie for the Flames, in Paris. They're doing some sort of NHL media tour in Europe. And Markstrom said he believes the Flames are now better with Kadri, Huberdeau, and Weegar than they were with Gaudreau and Matthew Tkachuk. That's the talking point right now.
I mean,
I don't buy it personally. Go ahead.
Really?
Two things I would say is it definitely was a good signing. I remember 2 weeks ago when things were dead, I had brought up, hey, I wonder if that offer from Calgary was still on the table and it was just less than what he wanted. And I was thinking it was between like 7.5 instead of the 9 that was being talked about. I never did hear an Islander offer, Mike, so I don't know, if it's true or not. I have no idea. But as far as the team being better, they're better defensively. They're different. They're still going to be scoring fewer points, I think, than the year before, but that doesn't mean they won't have the same impact because, again, Daryl Sutter's kind of got the team he wants now, even though he lost some great players. So they could still have a great season.
To be honest, I'm amazed by Brad Treliving's off season. I mean, it started with, he had pretty much the carpet pulled from under his feet, and then he landed straight on his feet, turned around, did a retool on the fly, and there you have it. The Calgary Flames are still contenders after their 2 best players walked out. That's just like, wow.
Well, I think that they're still a contender. I think they're still very competitive. Kadri fits in with sort of the motif of Daryl Sutter. I mean, he's a pain in the ass, and Daryl Sutter likes a physical brand of hockey. I think Huberdeau is an excellent player. I voted for him for the Hart. I think he was third or fourth on my list. He had 115 points. He's an excellent player. But I think that the argument that they're better without Gaudreau and Tkachuk and with the 3 that they brought in, I think it's ridiculous. I mean,
I'm not sure they're better, but they're still a contender. And that's as good as you can do with that kind of situation, quite frankly.
Yeah, they're different. They may be good, and they're different. I don't know if they're better. And maybe that's just the spin that they're putting on because they had no other choice. Tkachuk wanted out. He wasn't going to sign there, and Gaudreau left free agency. So it's sort of a self-defense mechanism, like somebody gets dumped by a girl or a guy, and then they move on to somebody else. I didn't like that person. I like this person better. I don't buy it.
Well, I think your claim that it's ridiculous to think, that is ridiculous. I think it's just too close to call. I think they're comparable teams. Huberdeau and Gaudreau are at least in the ballpark. I mean, maybe you like one better, maybe I like one, but they're equal. And Kadri brings some bite to the game. He's a center. Tkachuk's a forward, so it's sort of hard to tell. But Weegar fills a hole. They also pick up a prospect that's going to help them. I mean, I'm with Karine on this. I just think you have to look at it as Brad Treliving just did an unbelievable job.
Yes.
Recovering from what could have been a disastrous situation. And we haven't even talked about yet. Now, I'll leave that to Karine about Montreal's version. But they got rid of a center that they were, his time had run out in Calgary. And they wanted to move him. They didn't need his salary on their roster, and they were able to do that. They did have to give up that first-round pick that they picked picked up in order to do it, and that was a heavy price to pay. But his time was up there. So all in all, I think Calgary did a game, and at the very least, they're in the same spot they were last year. They just have different faces. So
it's a matter of seeing how it all gels together now. That's how we feel if they're better or not.
And I'll say this: Connor McDavid will lose sleep playing against Nazem. Nazem Kadri drove him crazy in almost every game that Edmonton played Toronto, and that was twice a year. He drove him crazy during the regular season when Edmonton played Colorado. Now he's going to be playing him 4 times a year. He's going to get underneath the skin of Connor McDavid, and that'll be fascinating. But let's segue here to La Belle Provence, and we talk about Sean Monahan getting traded to the Montreal Canadiens along with a first-round pick. Corinne, I know that there were a lot of conditions in this deal, but it's now firmly established in the NHL. If you're trading a player who's a $6 million plus salary, like Patrick Marleau a few years ago traded to Carolina and now Monahan to Montreal, you have to kick in a first-round pick to get that team to take that player. But in the difference here is Carolina bought out Marleau. Monahan, the hints right now are that Montreal, when he's healthy, may want to sign him to an extension. What are your thoughts on that trade?
I'm not sure about the extension, quite frankly. I think it's all a matter of, Price is going to be on LTIR, so we've got room. Let's help out Calgary, get an asset and process and first-round pick. And we'll see where the chips fall with Monahan because, he's had 2 hip operations now, so there's no guarantee that he can perform again. And if he can't, you just let the deal run out, and that's it. I see him playing this season, and if he's good enough, I see Kent Hughes flipping him at the deadline and just getting yet another asset for this rebuild. I'm not sure that long-term he fits in, but, that's what we'll see when he's playing this year.
Well,
go ahead, Russ.
The one thing I would say is, much like Tyler Seguin, I think Seguin's come back to a point where he's not Tyler Seguin of old, but he's still really good when he had like 25 goals, something like that. I think for people that thinking that Monahan is just a cap dump, he can't play anymore, I think that's a little premature. I think he'll be able to come back and play a decent role. And if he comes back and let's say he's a really good third-line center, I think Ken Hughes will sign him and not flip him. I think a guy with his size and still the ability at center, even if he's like, half of or close to a little 75% of what he used to be. And this is before Darryl Sutter decided to start fiddling with him too and throwing him on the 4th line and all that. I also think the change will help him. There's some talent in Sean Monahan that I think will still be there.
But more than likely, he's not going to get a $6 million salary.
No.
Well, no. That's for sure. But, if he fits in with Hughes' plan and if Hughes manages to get rid of, I don't know, let's say Dvorak at center, who hasn't really panned out, then, there's room for Monahan and you can keep him if he can still play. But that's still a big if for me. I mean, Treliving did say that he's in shape, he'll be ready to go, but I'm kind of I'll believe it when I see it kind of gal on that.
But this, this deal does, we throw the phrase around that, cap space is an asset, but we don't really understand that until these kind of things happen. This validates that saying that cap space is, if you want to move that $6 million player, you got to give up something that's of equal value. And people now say that is for a $6 million player, as Mike put it, is now a first-round pick. And for Calgary, this was very much worth it to them. They saw it, and they had 2 issues. First of all, his time had run out in Calgary. Second of all, they needed to clear up some space, and so for them, and they didn't even own that pick, prior to that Tkachuk deal. So all that, it made sense from them. It's a heavy price, but from their perspective, it didn't seem like a heavy price because it wasn't theirs, and it really accomplished 2 objectives: getting Monahan off the roster, and then clearing up the space for them to make their move.
Yeah.
Speaking of heavy price, though, I think in Montreal, the Monahan trade wasn't as big as it could have been had it not been for Kent Hughes saying that, I don't see a way that Carey Price is playing next season. He's going on LTIR. And so cue the Montreal media going, well, Price is done. What's his place in that history? Is he the best goaltender of his generation? I mean, there's barely been any coverage on Monahan, to be honest. It's all been about Carey Price right now, and it's understandable. I mean, the guy's a monument for Montreal. But
yeah, it's flying under the radar. But I wanted to ask you about that, Corinne, because I mean, last year, I mean, he was out for most of the season, and already the speculation was, he's done, and he came back and he wanted to come back, and it was one game, right?
No, he played in 5 games, but you could see that his movement wasn't as fluid as it used to be.
Right.
I mean, I've had 6 knee operation, and I was looking at him play, and I was like, yeah, he's not comfortable at all. So much so that in the last game of the year, I was like, I think this is it, and I think it will be. It's sad,
and I get the feeling, and of course I could be wrong, but maybe he stays with them a year, and then maybe gets flipped someplace for the LTIR hit. It's $10.5 million. I mean, they did it with Shea. They did it with Shea Weber, and there might be a team out there that can use Price to get to the cap floor. A team like Arizona, maybe, because they're always the ones that do that. But yeah, I mean, we can talk about his legacy going down the road, but I mean, I just. Kev, this wasn't a big surprise. I was like waiting for the announcement to come out that Carey Price was not going to play again, and I don't know if that what was announced means that, but I think it's more than likely we've seen the last of Carey Price.
Yeah, it sure seems that way, and I think even though people understood that was a possibility, I think now that it seems more likely than not, I think it is time to sort of look at his legacy. And, I think as people discuss him and the fact that, he reached the final, but he didn't win a cup, but he's obviously had international success. It just reminds me that we're going to have to start viewing superstar players and beyond the idea of whether they won a cup or they didn't. There's just too many teams. Too many teams, 32 teams. It's harder to win a cup than it's ever been. And we're going to end up with a lot of players who finish their career without, having won a Stanley Cup ring. And I think we need to sort of move away from that a little bit. Yeah, it's great if you win it. That adds to your legacy. However, there are going to be great players, some of the better players ever to play, that are not going to have cups.
Well, Russ, you can put him in the category of Henrik Lundqvist. Great career, won an Olympic gold medal, got to a Stanley Cup final, didn't win a Stanley Cup, but, an all-time great goaltender. Price, there's no doubt he's going to be a Hall of Famer, but he didn't win the cup, but he came pretty close, and he did have championships internationally. So, I think he'll be looked upon fondly when it comes to getting voted for the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I mean, things that seem like no-brainers with goaltending and the Hall of Fame sometimes turn into weird results. They both should get in, but we'll see what happens with that. I had a feeling last year when, Price came back, he played those 5 games, he didn't look good, that was it. I figured that he just wanted to get back out on the ice again one more time, and that's fine. The Canadiens let him do it. It didn't matter. He probably realized, okay, I'm not the same. It's not worth it for me to try and come back and go somewhere else and do all these things. His career is set and his legacy is set, and we'll be talking about him, and he'll definitely be worthy of all of it. He was terrific.
Now, Corinne, I won't spend too much time on this, but we just somebody had said Jimmy Murphy had reported that the Habs were trying to trade Christian Dvorak, and we've talked about it on this show. There is not a lot of cap room out there. Even the teams that have a ton of cap space, they're at the cap floor. They're at it. They're not below it. So trying to trade a guy who is a decent forward, but he's making almost a little less than $4.5 million with 3 years left. I don't know how it's accomplished unless they include a draft pick, like Calgary did for Monahan. But it's 3 years. It's not 1.
Yeah, I think it's going to be tough to do, but Montreal doesn't have a choice but to move someone. They've got like 16 NHL forwards committed for next year, so that's too much. So they need to make some room. And Dvorak, while he might be a likely candidate, I'm just not sure he's going to be the one going, because Kent Hughes, when he was hired, did say, I'm not in the business of selling low. So he might be the type of guy who wants to see what Dvorak can do under a full year of Martin Saint-Louis and maybe flip him later. But it's undeniable that they need some space. I'm just not sure they'll find a taker for the Dvorak. But then again, Hughes has showed that he can do a lot of things with trades. I mean, he almost had like a knife to his throat to trade Petrie, and it ended up being a very good deal. So, I'm just waiting to be pleasantly surprised again, to be honest.
We moved down into Long Island, where the New York Islanders, where we waited with bated breath for the New York Islanders to make their moves. They didn't sign Kadri, as we discussed, and instead the 4 moves that they were going to do were basically the signings of their own players. And Kev, start with the 2 defensemen. Russ and I were driving back from Michigan, and we get the report that Romanoff signs a 3-year deal at $2.5 million, and that Noah Dobson signs a 3-year deal at $4 million. The Romanoff deal didn't faze me. I thought that was about par for the course. The $4 million for Dobson is ridiculous. I mean, ridiculous in the sense that they got an unbelievable. That's a Lou deal but now the only thing is that they walk him to within 1 year free agency, and then they're going to have to pay the piper, or he's going to be playing someplace else.
Yeah, I was surprised Dobson was willing to go 3. I again ran this by $4 million, and he thought because I had predicted 4.5 or 4.75.
That's what I did.
And the GM said no. I mean, he said 4 is about right for Dobson. Like, he's a good player. He's not a great player. He thought that was in keeping. He was surprised by 3 years and not a 2-year deal. He just thought Dobson wouldn't have agreed to that extra year. So. I don't know. I mean, it's hard to get a handle on what Lou's doing there right now, because he hasn't made the team better. He's hung on to the properties he had, and we're going to have to see where we go. I mean, he's going to have, no matter what he gave him now, he was going to have to pay him on his next contract. And I think everybody understands that. So, as I've said before, the one thing that I think fan bases don't understand about Lou is he's very popular with his players. He tends to get more because he's engaged with them. He doesn't keep them in the dark. He always explains what he's attempting to do to them. Not everybody does that, but Lou does. He's always talks to his players, and you don't see that with all the GMs. And I think that's always crucial when you're trying to get players to sign for a little less or to add a year or 2. So, I still think he's going to have to do something, even if it's minor things. Like, I don't understand why he just wouldn't sign Phil Kessel for like $1.2 million or $1 million,
Yeah.
So he's going to have to do things like that, because they're going to need a little more offense.
Well, he's got $2.3 million under the cap after the other signing was Kiefer Bellows at $1.2 million, which I was a little surprised at, Russ, because they really didn't utilize Kiefer Bellows that much. So giving him $1.2 million was a little surprising. But I mean, the only thing positive here is that by not giving Dobson the big money, not signing him 8 years, they leave the space available next year to potentially sign Barzal. Right now they have $21 million under the cap for next year, but they also have other UFAs that they have to sign, like Scott Mayfield. So his business is not done. But the overriding factor, and this is what is pissing off Islander fans, is they didn't get any better. They're the same team, and this is a team that missed the playoffs. So where's the progress here?
Yeah, I'm in contact with a lot of Islander fans and media, and the first thought is I was surprised with Bellows, but happy, because maybe that signifies he's actually going to get a chance now instead of getting a scratch for like 20 games in a row and never really getting a chance, because I think he could play a little bit in the league. At least he could be a role player. With Dobson, I still think his career is going to go up. I think you're going to see similar numbers to like Devin Tage, and then it's going to be a problem on the back end. Or Islander fans are really worried that he might get traded off this deal the same as Tage did, and I just don't think they can afford to do that. I don't think they have enough defense coming, or will have enough money even in the next couple of years to do that. So I think they'll keep him, but we never know. Lou was in his press conference. He didn't make any friends, because he was saying, "Hey, this is our team. This is the team that I wanted to bring back," or whatever. But Lou's vision does not align with the vision of the fans. Not at all. Not even close. And that is something that is going to, be an issue. It could be an issue at the box office. If they're not playing well, he's going to give a lot of Islander fans reason not to show up to their new building, and that's going to end up being a problem too. So this team has to do well. They're built the same way they were before. They're older. They still have great goaltending, but they're really going to have to overachieve, at least in my eyes, to get to the playoffs. And again, if they're not in the playoff hunt, I think the Islanders are going to lose a lot in ticket revenue. So we'll see how it all plays out.
Yeah, Corinne, part of the, I guess, hope that the Islanders will be different than they were last year. They won't start the season with that long road trip, so maybe they get off to a better start and things don't snowball. But the addition of Romanov, we talked about the fact that they traded Taves because of cap space. They traded Leddy because of cap space. The mobility on the blue line decreased. I mean, they had Chara playing back there, and he's a statue at late in his career. Romanov is, he's got talent. They signed him for 3 years. How good do you think he can be, being somebody who's seen him for a while?
No, I think he's going to be good. He's still coming into his own, to be honest. He's still improving. So I was devastated to see him go. But then again, Montreal had to fix the need at center. But I think Lou did a great deal there, and he was signed to a reasonable deal as well. So I think they're going to get their money's worth with Romanov. And speaking of the fans will love him. The guy has got so much enthusiasm, and he's so likable. He really interacts with the fans, and it just gets them out of their seat as well with the huge hits. So he's going to be a fan favorite. So that would be good for them.
And as Chris in the chat is saying, that the Islanders, half the team missed a big chunk because of COVID. Yes, it was
whatever.
A lot of teams did.
That's the whole thing. This whole narrative has to stop. Stop looking back and stop telling everybody about the road trip, about COVID, about everything else. The road trip, everybody knew was going to happen, so you have to prepare for that. And COVID, every team has gone through the same thing. Every team lost a lot of players at different times. It is going to be up to these players whether they make it or not. They're older. They probably have too many muckers on this team. They need more help on the wing. Like Kevin said, makes no sense to not bring in someone like Phil Kessel who can put some points on the board. Maybe they will. Maybe they'll bring in somebody else. But all these other $5 million contracts they have, Palmieri, Bailey, obviously they couldn't move Bailey. All those other guys have to start producing. Pajot has to produce more. They all have to produce more. That's not Lou's fault. Lou just gave him a wage that kind of made it tough on the cap. But these guys are all underperforming.
Well, that's the thing, Kev. Who are the real Islanders? Is it the team that made it to the conference final twice, that played that rough and tumble type of game? Or is it the team that failed last year? The thing is they're getting a year older every year, like everybody else is. And when you bring back a team that failed and that it didn't change, I don't know if you can have any grandiose expectations of them making the playoffs and making a run.
Yeah, I mean, I think the framing of that is perfect because I think there is some question about, which team it is. And I think it is fair to say, they may be a better team just with the fresh start they'll have this year, and they won't have the long road trip. And, hopefully, and I'm going to put that in quotes because who knows, but hopefully COVID won't rob them. But the problem is what no one seems to be discussing is while they were busy kind of sputtering and trying to figure out, who they are and everything, the Metro got a lot better. Yes. I mean, a lot better. And that's the issue that I think, Lou really needed to improve this team. Even if he liked where it was last year and he thinks it's as good as it was 2 years ago, that team still would have trouble, in this new Metropolitan. And we just saw Carolina bring in Paul Stastny, which is just another good signing by them. We know how good the Rangers are, and they're only going to get better. They have a lot of young, talent there. There's still some very good teams in the Metropolitan. So, yeah, I get it that they hope they're going to be like they were when they were so good 2 seasons ago. But unfortunately, there's just too much talent in this Metro. They needed to improve.
Yeah. Mike's going to talk about another team that upgraded in the Metro too.
Yeah, I was gonna touch on a move to Carolina for that signing, and Russ, getting Paul Stastny, who had over 20 goals last year. He's 36 years old, but he's still an effective player. That's sort of, I interpreted that, and maybe I'm wrong, is that was the makeup for the loss of Pacioretty, because Pacioretty's going to be out for probably a year, and you get him at 1.5, which is a really friendly amount for a quality forward. So that's a really good move by Don Waddell.
I'm going to argue just a little bit, and I think it's the replacement for Trocheck. Okay. I think nobody talked about Trocheck.
That's fair.
That's a lack of confidence in Kotkaniemi then.
Well, no, Kotkaniemi, it's funny. Everybody was writing that Kotkaniemi was going to be the second-line center, but when I had called Waddell to do the story, he said, that's not where we have him projected. So, so anyway, but, Stastny had exactly the same number of goals as Trocheck. He was within 5 points of him. They're similar players in that they can win a key faceoff. They're responsible defensively. I would argue Trocheck has a little more bite to his game, but they're bringing in essentially the same guy they lost. And they got him for $1.5 million. Now, as you pointed out, he's older. And so, this is a short-term fix. But, Pacioretty, they got bad luck with him. But imagine if they had Pacioretty, Stastny, and Burns with Jarvis getting better this year. And, I don't think we've seen the best of Svechnikov. Like, I expected him to be better than he has been, to be honest with you. I thought he was going to be almost Ovechkin-esque, and he hasn't yet been done that. So, I think this was another great signing, and I think this team is going to be very good. I thought it was right on when The Athletic put the Carolina Hurricanes in their fan survey as the number 4 management satisfaction ranked team because, it hasn't always worked out for Carolina, but they've been very aggressive. I know the fans, want more out of Kotkaniemi, but I think they like the fact that they went out and got, they like the aggressiveness of, offer sheets. And I think they really liked all the moves this summer.
Stastny even has better face-off percentage than Trocheck, so it really is a good replacement for sure. I mean, and look, we all get it. Stastny's a little slower. Like, we understand that. Somebody wrote in the chat room he's too slow to play in the Metro. He's not. It's just, again, there are slower guys on teams, veterans that know how to make up for the lack of foot speed. Stastny's one of those guys, and even if he scores 18 goals, that's a bonus for them. Like, that's.
It gives them options, Russ. Less the option of him playing in front of instead of Kotkaniemi. I think it's more insurance against Neckish, because I always put Neckish as maybe their number 2 center offensively, but he has played wing at times, so maybe they're buying a year with Stastny in the middle, second line guy behind Aho or Stahl or whoever, and he gives them better in depth. I think it's effective. It's smart.
He does. I mean, look, the thing about Carolina is, and this is now going to go on year 3, everything is set for Carolina to win a Stanley Cup except their goaltending. That's the one thing I keep looking at. And I still don't think they have Stanley Cup winning goaltending, but everything else is there. They have everything else you want. Sure, they're always missing a little scoring, but they have one of the best, if not the best, defenses. They have a really good roster, but we'll see. The goaltending is going to have to outperform what I think they're going to do if they're going to win a cup or even make it to the cup.
Yeah. Now let's touch on the World Junior, which ended on the weekend, and again, I renew my. I saw the interview that James Duthie did with Luke Tardif, the head of the IIHF, and they were not pleased with the attendance in Edmonton. And I do understand it's August, but I'd also say that, there have been previous cities that have been criticized for attendance for games. I know that Montreal got it, Toronto got it, Buffalo, especially in 2018, especially for the early games, but it was sold out for Canada, Sweden in the final. And this year, Canada, Finland, there were empty seats in Edmonton. So I obviously think that it being in the summer was a factor, but I also think that, it shouldn't, games should have been sold out. Maybe lower the ticket prices if it's going to be in August.
To be honest, Mike, I think it's not only because it's the summer. I think the old Hockey Canada scandal played a big part in that. It was terrible timing, to be honest, and a lot of people just really didn't like reading about it. Didn't like that Team Canada, Hockey Canada, kind of had a fund for to make plaintiffs go away, essentially. So it seems that there's been plenty of things that have been swept under the rug, and people were just like, yeah, okay, we don't feel like giving money to Hockey Canada right now.
Well, Kev, the story that came out today or yesterday from Rick Westhead of TSN, that Hockey Canada went to all their advertisers and basically said, if we fire all the hierarchy, will you still advertise with us? I mean, it's okay, let's throw these guys under the bus. And is that good enough? No, you have to fundamentally change this organization that has been perpetuating this crap for years. And they don't seem to want to do that. Yeah.
And ironically, I think part of the reason for the culture issue is that these games are so big in Canada. They're televised, and the players develop an idea that they're infallible. And that they're stars, and obviously this has been a long problem. When you look at one of the issues that came up recently is over a decade old. So this has been going on a long time. So I agree. I think part of the reason why they didn't draw is I think that was Canada's sort of backlash against Canada. And it's almost, to me though, it's appalling that the way that they're looking at this, the board of directors, is what can we do to make sure our funding will continue. Not let's correct the problem and then let the chips fall where they may. It's okay, what can we do to make sure that we're going to be able to operate like we have in the past?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So the first thing is like Kevin's right, that this other stuff with Hockey Canada keeps getting worse and worse. I do think Canadian people were sending a message, but also the ticket packages, the way they've set up these ticket packages for like the last 5 years are lousy. And people don't have the money that that Hockey Canada thinks they have, and that has played a part too. As far as players, here's the one thing I'd say. For what I look for in this tournament are like phenoms like Mason McTavish. We knew he was really good going into the draft. He's played at all different levels of pro hockey now, and so he's a true phenom. Like Chris, who wants me to tout.
No! Stop! Don't.
Hold on, Mike. I want to answer all these things. He wants me to tout Aatu Räty, who I thought had a terrific run, but again, the thing is, he is 20. He's supposed to be terrific, so he has answered a lot of the naysayers. But he still has a little bit more track to look at to see. William Dufour, he's a guy that maybe they got a deal on because of the pandemic, but again, he's 20 years old. He is expected to do really well like that. Hockey Canada knew what they were doing by having a lot of 20-year-olds, and they still won with a little puck luck. There were some great players. Joachim Kemmel seemed to be under the radar, but he was great. A lot of these players were good. I shouldn't say a lot.
He was great, but he's going to spend the whole season in Finland still. I like that approach to let him develop even more.
Yeah, and some of these players will return to the next tournament. And that will be the one that gets better attendance. That will be the one that has more buzz. I get all of that, but this was still a good tournament. Like, I don't want people saying that this was a lousy tournament because it was in August, because it wasn't. It was really.
It wasn't lousy. It was good, but there was a lot less tight games than what we're used to.
Yeah, without Russia, it's tough. I mean, if you had Russia, it would have been like spectacular. But that last game was as exciting as any NHL game we'd ever watch.
It was okay. It was Russia. It was the fact that top players were held back from teams because Slavkovsky didn't play for Slovakia. Owen Power didn't play for Canada. Jake Sanderson didn't play for the U.S. So some of these players, their teams didn't want them to go, and they didn't go. So I think that held it back a little bit. It was still a very good tournament. I have to say, Mason McTavish is a wizard for that play that he made.
And Bedard's great. Like, we don't need to talk about Bedard every show. Everybody knows what he is.
Yeah.
I like to give other players some note because it's easy to just let Bedard just cover the That's the low hanging fruit here. That's
Well, we saw it was great, but we also saw that he still got work to do defensively because Dave King moved him down the lineup. He was with McTavish and really clicking, but he couldn't do both sides of the game. So he got pushed down.
But Kevin, the final thing here, 3-on-3 in overtime of a gold medal game.
Yeah,
I really thought I felt cheated in a way.
Yeah, I don't like it either. Let's settle it. Especially, we always treat the World Juniors like it's an important tournament because it is in terms of the development of NHL players. So let's act like it. And, it's the last game of the night, last game of the tournament. You can stay on TV a little bit longer. We know what the ratings are. Usually they're pretty good. They were down this year, but usually they're pretty good. So I don't understand that. I don't think we need.
Just
that.
imagine if Finland had won that, what the outcry about the 3-on-3 would have been in Canada. It would have been.
Yeah.
They would have deserved to win it, though. I mean, just killing all of those penalties in the second, I was like, wow, they were robbed.
Yeah, they had great chances.
They came back from 2-0 and they should have won on that play and didn't win it, and then came down and won it. So it was an exciting game. It was a pretty good tournament.
I did see an injury though. Ridley Gregg is out 3 to 4 weeks now. That's kind of rough because that's going to run into training camp because he was going to have a chance of making the Senators. So we'll see what happens with that.
Yep. All right, guys. Great show. We'll be back next week with another edition of the Hockey Podcast for Bryn Haynes, for Russ Cohen, for Kevin Allen. I'm Michael Agello. Thanks for watching. And remember, without the buzz, it's just